Welcome to the Moments+peace podcast. My name is Mike, and this is my lovely wife, Nereida. Hello. And we're here to help you in your journey raising your family to love the Lord through Christian homeschooling. A younger homeschool mom, meaning her children are younger, she had this question for us in looking out into the future, because for us, our children, we have 6 children ranging from 19 down to 8. And so we have a range of younger children and older children. We're in the high school teenage years. So she asked us this: as a homeschool mom with older children, how much time is typically required of you to teach, help your children, grade, etc.? And second part of that would be, what does your role as homeschool teacher look like with your older children?
I'll start with the first part of that question, which is
how much time is typically required.
So I think that there's more time in the planning stages, because you plan like you normally would with your core subjects, and then from your core subjects you have to pick out some electives and then add in their extracurricular. So maybe just a little bit more planning on that side. You also want to start keeping track of what you actually use and their grades, and
transcripts.
Transcript and creating a transcript, which sounds really scary, but it's not. If you can use a spreadsheet, you can use Masterbook's cumulative record. They have an example of one on there. Christian Liberty Press has a copy of it in their planner. You have Simply Charlotte Mason has one for people who have used a lot of the Charlotte Mason based education. So just planning out your core classes. Each grade, it basically will be a credit. So, you do 1 year math, that's 1 credit. It'll get if you do dual enrollment, then in some cases that the school takes care of those parts, and you just had to do 9th and 10th grade usually. So there is a little bit more footwork and administrative stuff that has to be done, but you're also a guidance counselor. So as much as you are a teacher, you now become a guidance counselor, because you're guiding them in what career path that they're interested in, which you can sometimes pair with their electives, or any extracurricular that they may want to do, or internships or job.
So how much time is
I would say it's way more time consuming in that side of it.
Right.
And then you have to just take it bit by bit. So maybe talk before the school year, talk over the summer, talk during the school year, and always be willing to pivot, because I don't know anybody who really started their planning in grade 7 and 8 and their kids stayed on that path for 11 and 10.
Right.
It's a general kind of path, but not many took it sometimes by 7th and 8th.
Because you got to be flexible to shift through whatever this curriculum you thought you were doing in 10th grade didn't work at all, and you got to shift to something different.
Exactly. Or even they might have really been into cosmetology, and that's everything they did in 7th, 8th, 9th grade, and then they get to 11th grade and they realize, I don't want to be in cosmetology. I don't want to do dual enrollment for that. So there's
they might pivot. I mean, just like some people go to college and they change their major. In the high school years, you kind of change your major, so to speak, of thinking, I'm going to go here. No, actually, I'm going to go here.
So you want to have the foundation of the basics, and that goes back to using HSLDA and knowing your state laws.
So if you don't know what HSLDA is, that's the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. You can become a member at hsLDA.org, probably, .com. Just look up HSLDA. It's a law service that you can sign up for. It's $10 a month for a family. We've been paying it for 10 years now. Oh, it's 14. Oh, we're grandfathered in. Whoop, whoop. So it's $10, $15 a month, and you're paying for the defense in case you need it, in case whatever state you're in case you have an issue, they're a legal backing for you. So you have a lawyer in your corner. And they have a lot of resources.
Tons of resources. Yeah. They have how to do transcripts. They have copies of transcripts and ideas and how to list certain courses on there, and all by your state law. So that also is extremely helpful. So as far as the day in, day out requirements, homeschooling teenagers is harder than academically guiding teenagers. So
I'd say that again. That's a good tweet. So
homeschooling teenagers is harder than academically guiding teenagers.
Okay. So expound on that.
That sounds like a lot. That could be an entire video in itself, because and that's what's so time consuming and so draining for you, because now the hormones have kicked in, responsibilities has kicked in, and it looks different in 9th and 10th grade than it does in 11th and 12th grade. 11th and 12th grade, I think they think I want to have the most fun that I can have, or I'm really serious and I got to figure this out, and it's almost like panic attacks of and decision fatigue. And then in 9th and 10th grade, it's like, oh, this is cool, this is fun, but I'm insecure, I don't know my way, all this. It's like you have a toddler that has that first year of an infant developed so quickly. That's what the 4 years of high school is like. You know, you think about it, they have to quickly decide how they're going to manage friends, their relationship with the Lord, they're figuring out their gifts and how they're going to use it in the local church, you know, and then they're navigating what they're going to do for a career path. If should they work, should they not? Now they have to drive things that are, you know, are acceptable but not acceptable for
It's
them.
almost like from
it's so much development
they
in
got a
4
break.
years.
It's almost like they got they got all their development, they became a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Officially, I'm a kid, 6, 7 years old. And you pretty much have a break until you're like 13, 14. You're just like
although
changing
those are
kids.
emotionally draining.
Emotional, puberty starting. But then it's almost like the same amount of mental overload happens to a person when they're now having to decide, what am I going to do with my life?
Yeah.
And that those questions are first starting to like echo in their brain.
Like, who am I really, and what are my skill sets and my gifting? And
so the time, I found that the time commitment you have to have is so much more for dealing with that emotional weight. And they also need a lot more sleep.
They need way more sleep, but they're
so
going to fight it.
Yeah.
They're going to fight it because something happens that at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 8 a.m., it's like they can be functional, but they're not going to talk to you. If something happens at night when it's quiet and they have that white space and all of a sudden they want to talk. And sometimes if you are doing Bible devotions and you're in a solid, you know, church and community, sometimes it's doctrinal things that they're wrestling with and that they want to know and that they're reasoning with, because now they're seeing their friends choose Christ. They're seeing their friends be moralistic and say they know Christ, but wondering if they're self-deceived, and friends who are choosing to just completely walk away and be in rebellion. You have kids who are dying in car accidents. You have suicide. There's so many multifaceted things happening in the teenage years that you literally have to be emotionally and physically available. So it is more demanding than the toddler years and losing sleep. Because and granted, the more structure you have and the more routine you have, the better your child is going to thrive and those academics are going to get in. And I know the original question was, how much do you spend really on academics? But that depends on how well your child's doing. Like, you know, is a food allergy and causing illness, and so they're not able to perform. We have a friend whose daughter was chronically sick, and you know, she had a bunch of medical issues come up. And for our family, it was me who had a bunch of flare-ups. And sometimes your role as a homeschool mom has to pivot and change. But when you're a teacher of a high schooler, it's actually, I think, the funner years, because you get to hear their reasoning, you get to see their worldview form, you get to see them defend the faith, you get to see their ideas expressed, you get to see what they gravitate towards. They kind of give you a buffet of what they're into, and so they start inspiring you because they start to create, whether it's music or books or art or
science stuff,
or you see them. We know a bunch of kids in our local speech and debate. You see them blossom and they come up with these profound speeches, whether it's something as simple as like birth order, or you know, the importance of fathers speaking blessing over their kids, and they're debating these issues. And it's amazing to see these kids do what they can do regardless of what their gifting is, and it's a privilege. And the academics, as far as me as a teacher, depends on what you decide to farm out and what you decide to teach. So for us, we do Bible and apologetics and poetry because of our philosophy of homeschooling is to we have a Charlotte Mason based education. So we do like hem study and a lot of that stuff all together. And then
so there's a lot of group work that integrates the older kids with the younger kids.
Right. And it's good for them to all hear the feedback.
So as far as time management goes, I mean, that's basically you're getting your maximum bang for your buck
when you can do a
dollar
lot of
per
stuff
hour
together.
because you're doing it all together.
Especially like history, you do like a core thing together. You read a core thing together. You might watch a documentary together, and then they get independent reading and writing assignments outside of that. Some people choose not to do that and just hand their kids a history course. So it goes back to your philosophy, because like for me, it's not until they hit high school that I let them do science by themselves. And
normally that's a group subject.
Yeah,
like a unit study for science.
Like or a themed for that year, and we all do it together. But then when they got into high school, they need to go a little deeper. So like when we did biology, I taught biology to all of my kids, but then my older kids had more work to do independently to go deeper in biology, while I just kind of did what needed to be done for the younger kids.
Kind of
that
minimalistic. Well, here's a question then. How do you handle, and so this might be to the same question for a mom with younger kids who has to homeschool older kids, how do you do the juggling act of, there is that group work where you're kind of managing everybody at the same time, but now you want to work with the younger kids. Do you then give the older kids the independent work at that time?
That's great.
So that's
the blessing. About 4th or 5th grade, that's really where you need to start developing a little bit more independence. Some kids, like our daughter Emma, she's extremely independent. Jacob was the same way. So like, 2nd grade, they can do handwriting, or they can do something by themselves. They're doing it. If they can handle a math concept by themselves, they're taking their books and they're doing it. But then there's other kids that liked being by our side and need extra aid and help but the more you farm off little bit by little bit to them as their responsibility, you kind of give them a flow of your day of what you expect, because they need those expectations. So when the high schoolers and middle schoolers are ready to do certain subjects by themselves that gradually have happened since upper elementary, then you do your group work together, whether we've done them first thing in the morning, we've done them after independent work. But they know it's listed, like in the beginning of the year, we do a syllabus, like this is what your independent work is, and this is what's required of you. And that's with or without me, I expect it to be done. And then this is the group work that we do. And if I fall ill or something like that, one of the older kids usually teach it, or we just don't do it and we have to catch up.
Right.
But they have gradually learned to do that independent work, and then that shifts you over to being able to be focused with the younger kids.
Right, because you've got several that are still, we got one that's still learning to read and has some learning setbacks with that. So in order to give him the time, you have to be able to farm out part of the older kids. And by that point, I mean, as long as they're a solid reader and can comprehend, they should be able to self-teach a number of things.
And then and if you're worried about like, oh, well, my kid can't self-teach this or that, I know that there's certain curriculum companies where they, like Shormann Math. I do not teach math. Past 4th grade, I do not teach math. Like they
right, and I'm well versed up to pre-calculus, but I work full time.
Right. So for me, what we do is they watch their video, they have step-by-step instruction, and then they do the coursework out of the textbook. Master Books has a Master Books Academy online where there's videos to aid it. Same thing with Saxon Math with the Dive or Nicole the Math Lady. There's BJU Press where you can do the long distance learning. Some people don't like to pay that fee, but you're getting a quality education. It's kind of priming you to pay for college, and they do everything. Like your student is learning at their pace. You get to give them a quality education. So you pay the $500 or so for the course, unless you happen to get them on a sale, and they have all the lab kits, like everything that they need for science, foreign language. BJU Press has an array of things. A lot of people like Abeka, but those are choices too. If something you feel intimidated teaching, something you feel like your child needs someone else to teach, you can do that, and you don't have to leave your home. So you're not driving schooling everywhere and disrupting the little ones when you've got older ones that need to be focused. And sometimes local communities have other moms who teach a chemistry class, and you try to drive your student back, or they've gotten their license and they can take themselves to class, or you carpool or whatever. So whatever avenues you have, your you tell them this is your independent work, chemistry is your independent work, and this is how you're doing the class. And there's so many choices today that you don't really have an excuse to not homeschool your kids because you're intimidated by something that you don't really have to teach, or because you think you can't balance it all. And then just check in with them, make sure they're getting their work done, make sure that you can make sure that you're just talking with them, whether it be weekly or daily. Check their work and see it, even if it's being automatically graded, like Shormann Math or something.
But the amount
like
of time, because you're leveraging other people's ability to teach in the form of either a technology answer from a company that can provide video-based learning, a local answer, which could be either a tutor or a co-op where another mom is teaching. Like, let's say there's a mom that's great up to calculus, and she,
which
like
we know plenty.
It's like math whiz, and they could tutor a number of kids. You can work that out locally in a homeschool community, and that also. And also, there's the dual enrollment. If you have a local college that has the ability to do a dual enrollment while they're still in those junior, senior years, you can also leverage that. So you're not entirely letting the weight of their education fall solely on your shoulders when it comes to literally teaching, because there is a fixed number of hours in the day, and you cannot physically teach every single thing unless you were to give 12 hours every day.
Right.
So in order to focus your attention more fully and carefully on younger students, you can outsource some critical things, like cherry pick the things you want to outsource.
Yeah, and that's how I've always done it. Yeah. Especially in those age, I never just drop my kid off at a class or this teacher because my friends liked it or this like it. And I've never chosen curriculum like that. It should always be done through prayer, like a sounding board with your spouse to make sure that this is the best fit. Run it through your kid who has to do the work. How much way they get in that, it's up to you. Also, discernment needs to be used there. And just you can do everything at home. Our kids haven't really done outside classes, but we have gotten together with other friends to do classes at our house or their house. And
also a couple times we did, like for instance, a biology class that several families teamed together, just did a biology course. The moms are meeting during the day on once a week? Was it once every other week, something like that? But then they would come together and do a presentation night where all the dads could participate. We have a bunch of snacks, finger foods, we had, coffee, tea, and then we had the TV with the PowerPoint all hooked up so everyone could do their PowerPoint presentation. And then all the families got to listen to everybody else's presentation, and it gave everybody that ability to present and practice those public speaking skills. And you guys gave
that critical feedback.
Yeah, we'd all we'd criticize them in a healthy way, in a friendly way, and it would provide that sense of community in something very simple. But it was also giving where you're not just your kids in your house with just you. Like you have to be connected to more than just your own four walls to give a well-rounded education, which means a community connection in church, a community connection with other homeschoolers, and possibly with a local community college for dual enrollment. But I would caution, be very hesitant to just send your kids out if they're not really spiritually mature at their age to be just immersed into whatever that is. Because though they're, not to be like boogeyman, but they're still, their worldview is developing.
No, our world is crazy. And just because they say they're a Christian college does not mean that they have a biblical
True,
world.
Or even a local community college that's basically publicly funded. I mean, they could be, I remember taking classes in community college when I was 18 and 19 that were already talking about transgenderism in a literature class. And that was in 2001. Yeah. I mean, it was still there, and I guarantee it's all the more there. So there's still worldview conflicts that there's a reason it's free, because you're not getting technically a free education when you do dual enrollment. No. You're exchanging worldview and
exactly. And a wise older mom told me that early on, because a Western civilization teacher ripped her kid apart in a dual enrollment class. So it doesn't come at a free cost. Yep. And I would highly recommend not sending your kids and putting them into dual enrollment without thorough investigation, prayer, and them doing master books or generations like master books publish it, but it's a Kevin Swanson Worldview and Conflict, and Apologetics in Action by Master Books. Also the answers 1 and 2 from master books that talk about the cultural war. And I would also say Education, Does God Have an Opinion by Israel Wayne is extremely important to read and really understand, because that might shake your thinking, because God is very clear about who is to instruct children, and the only 2 people in scripture to instruct your children are you and grandparents.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's what God designed. He designed a family unit and a heritage of godliness that passes from one generation to the next, and that you pass that down through osmosis, through just spending time together. And while you're sitting by the way, while you're walking down the street, whatever it might be, you address every issue and you bring it back to the Lord, and talking about how that education is all connected to a Christian worldview.
And that's why the homeschool high school years are the best, because you see that fleshed out from all the stuff that you like sowed, you get to reap that in the high school years, especially as they get launched out. And they can be some of your best fellowship is with your own children. And I love homeschooling. I love homeschooling through high school, probably the best, because there's no intellectual limits. There's no spiritual limits. Like you're having a conversation with a growing adult, and you get to also just experience fun stuff, and you get to start pawning off decisions on them and seeing how they make those decisions, and you can help guide them in those decisions. So I think that you should not ever be intimidated to homeschool through high school, and a typical day is probably about 5 to 6 hours, only because math and science usually takes a little bit longer, and that's only because of the depth of the things that they're studying.
It's more intense and it's more academically rigorous.
Yeah, and sometimes you might have a kid who's in a funk. They didn't sleep well. They're moody for whatever reason, or they're just lazy, because that happens too. Brilliant but lazy. But I mean, I would say, we get up hour and a half in our Bible and morning time, stuff that we do, and then independent work takes maybe a couple hours, and then we like to kind of finish the day together too. So, even if you really streamline it, I know homeschoolers who get a high school day done in 4 hours.
Right.
So it does not, anywhere from 4 to 6 hours, and that's all it really takes.
The 8-hour day is really just a byproduct of living industrialized factory work. I mean, you break the day up into 3 8-hour shifts, and so to think that I have to work and do my schoolwork as a student, as a high schooler, for 8 full hours, really they don't. They can accomplish their academics, and then they can go get that part-time job that teaches them some work ethic, puts them in the work environment, teaches them customer service. If they're in an environment where that makes sense, and if they're spiritually mature to do so.
Exactly, because the worldview conflicts will happen in the workplace, especially now where it's extremely hostile, and they have to be equipped. Your job is to equip them and arm them as much as possible now, so that they are on the front lines in God's army. And I pray that my kids are commanders in God's army. Like they are all in.
Ready to fight.
And ready
You're launching out an arrow, to borrow the analogy from Scripture that says, a man's children are like arrows in a quiver, and you're basically launching out an arrow into the world. You don't want to launch that out until it's sharpened, and you don't want to send out that dull arrow which doesn't land and hit its mark.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that you've gotten the sharpening work done. So to spend the time to really invest in your kids, and then let them go out into dual enrollment or into a job or whatever that might be as they're starting to drive, when they're ready. Only you can really judge whether they're mature spiritually enough to be able to handle whatever the world's going to throw at them. So your work doesn't finish when you get into the high school years. You don't just take your foot off the gas, in the sense of you're not going to be focusing so much on controlling everything they do. You're going to be, to borrow the analogy I heard from Israel Wayne, you balance between control and influence. You dial back on control. You're not there to control every little thing. You give them more decisions to make, and you are becoming more of an influence in their life. Because then once they cross that threshold and they get across that graduation stage, the idea is to cultivate that relationship where you continue to have influence and guidance as they get into their next new season, which is starting to have a job, starting a family, having kids, bringing grandkids over, dynamics between in-laws. Like, there's a whole lot of coaching that still has to happen into their adulthood that you want to keep that influence alive so you can still have that relationship. You don't want to burn those bridges by being still a helicopter mom or helicopter dad thinking I need to control them like I did when they were 5. Like, no, this is now a new stage where you can simply tell them, like my friend Matt says, so how do bad decisions feel?
Yes.
His daughter went out it was freezing cold outside and they went to go on a walk or something.
No, they went to the
park?
No, in DC, they went to the Life Prayer.
Oh, and she's walking in flip-flops and it's freezing. And she's like, oh no, my feet are freezing. And you know, she's what, 18 years old or something? So he said, yeah, how do bad decisions feel?
Yeah.
That's the great thing you get to do. You let life be the teacher at that point. You don't have to spare them from the pain of all that. But so to reel back into the original question,
and that she asked about grading.
That was the last thing.
The thing about grading is a lot of that stuff can be automated depending on the curriculum that you use. And so I don't grade math because that's automatically upper grade math. I don't grade because that's automatically graded for me. Everything else I grade based on how they do with mastery of the subject, whether they can narrate it orally or written, and their tests, because I do
like
tests.
Basically that their comprehension is there.
Do they comprehend?
Do they
have and do they have a good attitude and all of that? Did they present it well? Like, do they know the concept well enough to like present it back to me? And
so how much time is actually committed to that?
Yeah, and then you have to take those grades weekly or however. Some people do it daily, some people do it weekly. I've done both. It's nice when your kids have their own planner. I use the non-consume student planners, and they can grade it after I check it daily. They can grade it, and then at the end of that week, and then you take the semester and you just put it into your transcripts. So that makes it kind of easy. But it can be time consuming, because if I don't get to it that day or follow up by them that day, usually on Fridays, that's what I'm doing in the afternoons. It's like
playing catch up.
Catch up and doing that on Friday afternoons or evenings, because I don't really want to do it or have the time on Saturdays.
You don't want to let it go Sunday. A whole month and then you've got to catch up on a whole month.
No, but I have, and it's horrible.
When crises happen, you got to do what you got to do. But,
but it's
ideally, you'd want to stay on top of that. Kind of like cleaning your house. You don't wait a month to clean your house. You do it as often as you can so that it doesn't become a massive chore.
My kids think it's funny because when they have like a bad attitude during morning time and we're like trying to get stuff done, like whether I'm teaching them etiquette and leadership skills or, poetry, if they have a bad attitude or they're disrupting a lot, they start with an A, but they might not finish with an A. Mm-hmm. So that, like, for that day.
They'll diminish the grade as the attitude drops. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they're being disruptive, and then they can't. I call on them, like classic calling on them. I have 6 kids, 5 now, but I call on them, and if they can't tell me the answer and they weren't paying attention and like not even like a clue or anything.
Like they were spaced out, looking out the window.
Yeah,
what?
They get an F.
Yeah,
they get an F.
Yeah,
for that day, and that might sound like really harsh, but do that on the job site and let's see how long you hold that job. Mm-hmm. If you want to be promoted up and all of that, like that matters. So like your daily performance matters. So
in the real world, failure is a good thing. It teaches you that you've made a mistake and how to fix it and to move on. And it's a teacher. Failure is a teacher, and it's a good thing. You don't see people who reach amazing levels of success who didn't fail their way up the ladder to get it.
And I'm very merciful. Like I kind of let it go for a bit.
You're like, all right.
And then after a while,
you spaced out one too many times.
And then I'm done. Yeah. Right. So there, obviously, when you start your day out in prayer in the Word, it's a lot easier to navigate those kinds of things. Yeah. But I usually, for my kids, we do A, B, C, or you fail.
Yeah.
There's no
D and E.
Yeah.
You go straight to F. A. So A is above average, B is average, C is below average, and if you're below average, then you fail.
Yeah, and then C is basically like, I get it. You're struggling. Usually it's algebra, and it's like, okay, I get it. You're struggling, whatever. But no, you're not going to fail.
Yeah, and failure is to then lead you to success. It's not a disparaging, let's beat you down. It's to keep you going. And so for grading and the time you have to put into it, if it's a maintenance thing, and if you're sticking with it and doing it weekly, then it's something that you can overcome. It's not going to pile up on you. You're not going to reach the end of the year and go, oh man, I got to grade the whole year and write this transcript and all that stuff. So if you maintain it as you go, create a file
or
on
like a student
planner,
or I even like master books and generations. They're
jot
very
it down,
good
type
in the
it in.
beginning of their course class. They have like what you're supposed to do. And so I look over my kids' stuff, and if they answered all of their questions thoroughly and correctly, they would go back and they would just write A for the day. So by the time I get to Friday, I can look at that and kind of, see. Or if they missed, a couple of things or whatever, then maybe it was like not a high A. Or we have a grading scale, which I do recommend that you have one. But,
like A+, A minus?
Or like 9, we do like 90 to 100 at A.
Okay.
90.
So you give them
have
a number.
A grading, because you're going to need that on your transcript. But yeah, you just give them a number, or you give them the letter grade, and try to keep up with it weekly. If not daily, definitely weekly. I would not go more than 2 weeks, especially. But again, it depends on your curriculum choices, because if you're doing distance learning or something like math with teaching textbooks, or Shormann Math or something like that, it's already graded for you, so you don't have to grade it.
Right.
So yeah, it's just your courses. And then some things, I don't really grade apologetics. That's discussion based.
Right.
So,
and you're just gauging how well they engage.
But
in
you
the
do have to
discussion.
give them a grade.
Yeah.
For the transcript. So daily, weekly grades, I don't do that. But when they have to perform, because I am kind of antagonistic towards them, I'm a good person, why do I have to go to heaven? Like, like that, I'm going to heaven or whatever. Then, or whatever it might be, we'll quiz them on it. Or Master Books has a final exam in some of their built-in apologetic courses, and so just how they do on that is the grade that they get.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I hope this has been super helpful for you. I think there's a great way to navigate your schedule and your time management when you reach those years where you've got littles and mediums and bigs, and you have the kids and all the ages, and you're working through all that stuff. There is a way to do it. It is not a hopeless endeavor. It can be managed. It can be done. There are thousands of families doing it every day, and you can be one of them. So stay encouraged there, homeschool family, on managing it through the high school years. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up this episode?
Don't be intimidated by the high school years. First of all, as a blood-bought child of Jesus Christ, He's with you. He's for you. And He's the one that began the good work and will be faithful to see it through. And
preach it.
Just stay faithful, because that's really all Christ wants, is for us to be faithful, and He's the one that does it, and leave the results to Him. And it is a daily dependence on Him. And enjoy your children. I think these 4 years go by faster than any other years, and you can't get them back, and they're the best years, and they will keep yielding you the fruit that you bore.
Yep. So we will do our best to put references and links to all of the things that we mentioned today in the description and show notes for this episode. We hope that it's a blessing to you. Please make sure that you share and like this video if you're watching it on YouTube, or on iTunes if you're listening to the podcast. Make sure you subscribe there and leave us a review. That will help other people find this podcast. We want to make it our mission to provide as much peace into the homes of homeschool families. So you will be a peacemaker as you continue to help us spread the word about this show. So we thank you, peacemakers, for all you're doing. And until the next time, we'll see you later. God bless.